Well, Gold Derby fans, she is essential in telling the story with all the backstage drama behind all of your favorite drag queens. This is Kendra Pasker of Drag Race, RuPaul's Drag Race Untucked, and she's back nominated once again for an Emmy for editing, picture editing for an unstructured reality series. I'm Sam Eckmann of Gold Derby. Kendra, congrats on your latest Emmy nomination.
Thank you so much.
This editing is really fascinating to me in reality shows because you really have the power to shape so many narratives and shape, there's all this footage you get and you have to shape that narrative and what stories are being told, what we get to see. So unlike the main series of Drag Race, Untucked you don't have to worry about spoiling or telegraphing kind of who's going to be going home because it airs afterwards. We already know who's going to go home. We know who's won. So is there, as you're looking at the footage, is there a tendency to want to gravitate towards telling that eliminated queen story?
Definitely, because this is going to be the last time that we get to see them, this is kind of it for them. So we want to see how they're feeling sort of in this moment. When you're in Untucked, you're in a very odd space because you're all the adrenaline from the rush of performing and dancing and singing and creating all of these looks is kind of over, and you're in this sort of anticipatory moment, and there's just a lot of emotions running high, and we want to get into their heads and see how they're feeling and what they think is going to happen. That's the other thing, is like where they really feel they are based on compared to what we've already seen happened. What were they feeling in that moment?
Yeah, I think that's maybe why some of the most iconic lines or moments actually come from Untucked when people think of Drag Race. Like if you think of Shangela's sugar daddy moment comes from Untucked, and there's all these great things that have become memes, that have become viral. Is there like a pressure to kind of hunt for those kind of moments when you're trying to edit the episode?
Luckily you don't really have to hunt for them. They come inherent with the queens. It's not, they do that naturally. It's more sort of picking which ones, how many can we use, how many can we squeeze in,
Right. And I'm always wondering, because Untucked, shows the behind the scenes, it airs right after the main Drag Race series. So what is kind of the collaboration process like with the folks from the mother series? Because is there sort of a process where you need to think about what kind of stories being told from the episode that has to carry over into Untucked?
Definitely. I mean, sometimes there's through lines, and we try to, things that are mentioned on the show, but they don't really have a lot of time to flesh things out and let things breathe the way that Untucked is. So if it comes up again in Untucked, then we definitely want to play it out because, we want the girls to get the chance to, finish their thoughts. And then also there's sometimes, things that happen in Untucked that didn't happen on the main show, or, it did, but it, carries over into Untucked. It wasn't maybe on camera on the main show, and then they bring it up on Untucked, and then they sort of get to have their moment there.
Yeah. I've noticed it's not always the case, but oftentimes Untucked relies less on the confessional moments than the main Drag Race does. Is that just because there's so much of those dramatic moments happening in real time?
I mean, I think with Untucked kind of is the confessional. Like the whole thing is the confessional, so we don't really need that.
Yeah. And you're nominated for episode 4, The Ball, which was a great runway witnessing everyone's constructed garments. And you had a really great moment, editing moment, where you kind of get to mirror, you frame Gigi, who's in the top, and she's very confident about her outfit. And then you just see the flip side of the experience with Rock'em Sakura, because she's in the bottom, she's destroyed. Do those kind of, like when you think about that moment, really greatly mirrors both sides of the experience? Do moments like that sort of naturally produce themselves to you, or do you have to really comb through things to create those?
I mean, I think it's more sort of paying attention. you know, sort of paying attention to the juxtaposition and you know, being able to display that, you know, and just sort of, oh wow, like they're really having sort of opposite moments at the exact same time. That's really interesting, and bringing that to the audience.
Yeah, yeah. It's there's two other editors nominated alongside you, and
Yes.
I'm always wondering what is it like in the actual editing room? Is it normally just like maybe the three of you? Are there other folks like directors in there who are having input in the story as well?
Yeah, so you know, we work really closely with our co-EP, Kenneth Leslie, who does a really great job of sort of kicking things off for us, and you know, letting us know, you know, what the main story is and what the direction is, and also our supervising producer, Adam Bronstein. And so things have, you know, really migrated. I've been on Untucked for a really long time. I started when it was on Logo, and then also when it moved to online, and I was kind of the only editor. They bring in another editor here and there to sort of help get us over the hump sometimes. But now back on VH1, we're a team of 3, and I'm doing a lot more polishing work. So Kenneth and Adam and I will work with one of the other 2 editors, and they will sort of do a rough pass, and it'll come to me, and then we'll, you know, do some more, you know, fine tuning, in conjunction also with the main show.
Yeah, the
Make
show
sure
has
bring all the right storylines in.
yeah, the show has really blown up recently. It's gotten so much more attention. It's been on this really rapid trajectory from those Logo days. What has it been like watching so many more audiences glom onto the show?
I mean, it's really exciting. It's really exciting. You know, it really makes us feel as though, you know, the world is expanding, and, you know, people are becoming more and more excited, and, you know, really getting to see all the talent that these queens have to offer, which is, you know, just fantastic. And, you know, also it's allowing other people who may have never thought that they could find the confidence to even audition for the show. It's like sort of giving them a chance to think, you know, like maybe I can do this.
Yeah. And this season, you know, started out with this thing where a contestant is disqualified, which we haven't had in a while. And we had to sort of, like, I imagine that affected you because were there episodes where you had to go back and re-edit the episode to sort of put stories in another place? How did that affect your timeline?
It wasn't actually that bad. It really was more about just making sure that this one person didn't pull away focus from the other queens that had worked so hard to get there. You know, like we don't want, you know, that person to, you know, impact their dream and impact their hard work. So it was really about sort of making sure that we were focusing on the other queens.
Yeah. And someone who really focused on the other queens was Leslie Jones. She, I think, is one of my favorite guest judges to ever be on Drag Race. She has so much enthusiasm, and it was great, you know, when we get the judges backstage sometimes to share that enthusiasm with the queens. And she has so many moments, like she's encouraging people who need it, like Britta or Nikki Doll, and she's signing "I hate this shoe" on Widow's ugly yellow shoe. So
Yeah.
we're like, how do you choose? She just seems like such an exuberant person. Was there more to sort of choose from? Did you have to whittle that down?
I mean, I think that all of the moments are there. You know, you just have to sort of try and display them as much as you can, for as long as you can, but make it concise at the same way in the same time. So, I mean, I think we pretty much touched on everything that she said back there, and, you know, all the encouragement that she gave. And, you know, I think that it's great for queens to see someone from her background. As she said, you know, she didn't grow up in some kind of glamorous lifestyle, but she was still able to showcase her talents and, you know, become a name, and, you know, they could do that too. And I think that's just super encouraging.
Yeah. And that is only episode 4, so there's still a lot of queens there. Is it easier for you to edit an episode where there's still a bunch of queens left in the competition, so there's lots of storylines, or does it get easier when they've whittled it down when it gets closer to the top?
I don't know if there's an easy.
Or maybe which one's more challenging? Maybe that should be what I asked.
I think that they're both challenging in their own ways. I mean, if there's lots of queens and then there's lots of activity and you only have so much time, whereas if there's not a lot of queens, you have to make sure that the conversations are still, concise, because, you really could just sit there and just watch them talk. So you have to be a little bit careful with that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And we talked about the eliminated queens before and how this is their last time, and you really kind of have a lot of responsibility for that in a way, because it is the last. Every Untucked episode really ends with the goodbye. Some of them handle it better than others. Rock in this episode was very distraught. How do you approach framing that goodbye sequence?
I think that we want to show a lot of compassion. I mean, we love these queens, so we want to show a lot of compassion, but, we also want them to be honest about how they're feeling. Sometimes they leave and they're not so happy with some of their fellow contestants, and it's not our job to shy away from that, and those, sad moments that we all feel, a lot of compassion for them. They work so hard to get where they are. And, that's really what we want to be able to show and see and allow them to have their moment, their last big moment.
Yeah.
Or not.
Or not. Are there any times where you just end up really rooting for a queen and wish they had stayed on longer, so you wish you had more storylines with them?
I mean, I already mentioned Vanjie. I love Vanjie. I'm a big fan. So I was sad to see her go when she left. But for the most part, I don't know if I have a lot of favorites. I tend to the cast is just so good, generally speaking. You're not really going to have a lot of people that you're not rooting for, really.
Yeah, and this season in particular was pretty stacked of a ton of queens with great personalities. And luckily Vanjie got to come back. She got another day in the sun after her moment there. This is you've had 2 nominations so far. This is your second nomination for this show. What does it feel like to just have that continued recognition of the series?
I mean, it's fantastic. I'm glad it's finally on the radar, and that, people are seeing something special in it, and they are, recognizing the hard work that goes behind it. It's, pretty fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we'll all have our fingers crossed for you this Emmy season. RuPaul's Drag Race Untucked certainly provides us with some of the greatest behind the scenes moments that we could hope for with these queens. So Kendra, thank you for speaking with me. Everyone who's out there watching, make sure you subscribe to Gold Derby and keep up to date with us through Emmy season. Kendra, thanks again.
All right, thank you. So great to meet you.